This is Ponder Darling My Busted Heart, and this video is by far the most important video I've ever made, and quite possibly the most important video I will ever make. So I'm going to ask that you please share it. It could save a life. The topic of this video is, why do they stay in an abusive relationship? This is something that people ask all the time when they see somebody they love staying in a relationship with somebody who is hurting them physically and quite possibly is endangering their life. So I need to address this. It's really important. I am an abuse survivor. I have been physically abused, and so I know what I'm talking about. A lot. However, in the spirit of being honest and authentic, I do need to say this video is not about Jefferson. I know that I made this whole channel to process my heartbreak over losing Jefferson. However, the truth is that Jefferson was the least abusive partner I've ever had, which is why I loved him so much and was so attached to him. He never put his hands on me. He never even called me a name. However, he was very neglectful, which is a form of abuse. So even though he was not actively abusive, I don't consider that relationship free from abuse. But I am not talking about Jefferson. I am talking about people who are physically abusive. So, I actually have written notes, so if you see me look way down, it's because I'm referencing my notes. As I've pointed out so many times, this is low tech, so bear with me. So the question, why do they not leave the abusive relationship? First, let's talk about the phenomena of abuse, okay? The truth is, this is statistically, that abuse, murder by somebody that they love is the #1 non-health reason why women are killed. #1. There's heart attack and diabetes, I think, are like above that statistically, but ahead of accidents and everything else, the #1 killer of women is the people that they love, the men that they love, mostly. Now, I am very deliberately saying they instead of she, because I believe, and I have witnessed in my own life, that men do get abused, and unfortunately there's this huge stigma against men who get abused, and our society just has no room for them, and it's really tragic, and it's really, really sad, and it's hard for men to get help because they're shamed about it. And I understand this experience because my first husband, when he beat the tar out of me, he was so tiny. He was really tiny. And so nobody believed me. Nobody believed that he beat me up, because everybody was like, well, why didn't you just snap him like a twig? Well, because that's not the kind of person I am. I don't fight people. I've never punched anybody in the face in my whole life. I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover. So, I totally understand where men are coming from, where, they're stigmatized. They're treated like they should have been able to control it. They should have been able to control their woman, and they didn't. And so somehow it's their fault. It's not their fault. Abuse is abuse. And I think that if men reported abuse as much as women did, you would see the gap in those statistics. You know, the majority of abuse statistically is perpetrated on women. I think you would see that gap narrow quite a bit if men were given room to report it, which they're not. It's very sad. So, why do they stay? Here's what I have to say about that. That is a bogus question. Stop asking that question, why do they stay? Okay? What you need to ask instead are these questions. Okay? Number one, do they have a safe place to escape to? Now, when I say, do they have a safe place to escape to, you may be one of those people who's like, yeah, they could always come to my house, or yeah, I know somewhere they could go. But the bigger question is, can the abuser find them there? Because a lot of victims are terrified of being stalked. The reality is that when an abuser loses, a victim is like a power supply to an abuser. You take away their power supply and they're going to spin out and they're going to escalate fast. And actually, talking about statistics, the vast majority of women who are murdered by their abusers are murdered by their abusers when they try to leave. So this is a life or death question. Also, a lot of people think, oh, well, she can just go to a shelter. No, not really. Shelters are overrun. They're usually full, and usually they only take people who are in severe danger of being killed, like immediate, urgent, severe danger. A lot of times the police take the people there because they've just been, you know, seriously beaten. There is not enough room in the shelters for all the victims of abuse. Trust me on this, because a lot of people are like, oh, just go to the shelter. No, sorry, that's not reality. So stop saying that she can just go to a shelter, or he can just go to a shelter. Well, he can't go to a shelter usually anyway, because there's really not shelters for men. So again, what I said before, very sad. Also, the law often prevents women with children who share children with the abuser from running away from him. I experienced this myself, personally, that I tried to run away and hide from my son's father, and I got a court order that I was not allowed to leave the state. So this happens all the time. If a woman runs away from her abuser, a lot of times she suddenly finds herself arrested for kidnapping. And then her children that she ran away with trying to protect them from this guy end up going and being with him. So, you know, serious flaws in the law, not protecting abuse victims from their abusers. Okay, so that's number one. Does she have a safe place to go? You need to ask that question, because the reality is, if she doesn't have a safe place to go, or if he doesn't have a safe place to go, they're not going to leave. Period, the end. Even if they know that they need to, they're not going to go, especially when there's kids involved, because it's all about the kid needs to be safe. When you're a parent, you want your kid to be safe. So, big question to ask instead of why they don't leave. Number two, okay? Even if they have a safe place, are they addressing the issues that put them in that abusive relationship? I know that it took me years of therapy, of counseling, of reading books about abuse, etc., etc. It took me years to really understand why I was being drawn to these kind of people. And it took a lot of work, beyond that even, to say, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. So if you have a friend who is being abused and they don't see at all that it's not okay for them to be abused, then they're not going to want to leave. And that happens. There's this thing called Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome happens when a person who doesn't even know their abductor gains sympathy and friendship with their abductor. Now imagine how much more Stockholm Syndrome somebody can have when they're in love with the person who's abusing them. It is very, very hard to get away from somebody that you already love who is abusing you. And if you don't understand Stockholm Syndrome, look it up, Google it. It is a real thing. It is very, very well researched. And people who are put in these torture situations become bonded to this person who's torturing them, even if that person is clearly their enemy. It's even more strong. It's even more strong of a bond when they already loved that person. Okay? Number 3. How many people in their life are communicating healthy ideals to them? Chances are, if it's only you, that's not enough for them to be inspired to break their pattern. They need a whole huge support system to be able to get away from somebody who has that much power over them. Not just one person. Yes, you can participate, but if you're the only one and you really want to help them, it's really important to try to help them find resources. You cannot do it alone. You can't be the only person. It won't work. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry. It's probably not what you want to hear because you want to, be enough. But, this is a really, really strong bond that has to be broken. These are very strong patterns that have to break for somebody to escape their abuser. And it's going to be the fight of their life. You have to understand that. That's why they're not leaving. That's the real answer. Number 4, are they in active addiction? A lot of people don't talk about this because we like to polarize. We like to say the abuser is all wrong and the victim is completely pure. But the fact of the matter is, if you've got an abuse victim that is in active addiction to any substance, alcohol, food, drugs, gambling, whatever, they can even be addicted and often are addicted to their abuser in some way or another, sexually or as a love addict or as a codependent. If they are numbing themselves with some kind of addiction, they are never going to see the urgency of of the fact that they need to get away. Never. They won't see it. They're just going to be stuck in this numb addiction. It is very, very hard for them to see if they're actively addicted. It is very hard for them to see that they need to get away. Number 5. Where are they in the abuse cycle? Okay, there is a cycle to abuse. There's this wind-up phase where the abuser starts with little abusive things, and then it escalates and escalates and escalates to this point where it's this huge thing. That ends up being, something like, they punch the victim in the face or they try to kill him or something. It goes on and on and on and on to this point where there's like enormous damage that's done to the victim. Usually at that point, that's when the victim has like this little window of opportunity where they can realize that they're in danger. A lot of times that is when they leave, or that's when the police get involved, or that's when there's some kind of intervention. And for just a little moment, they're able to break from their illusion of the relationship. However, then what happens after that? Usually very quickly, like with lightning speed. What happens after that is the abuser then suddenly turns really sweet and really nice and wants to make up with him, brings gifts, flowers, I'm so sorry, I'll do anything for you, becomes the ideal partner for a little bit of time, until then they again begin very slowly becoming abusive again, because they can't keep that up. They can't keep it. They can't continue to act that way. However, when you love somebody and they act that way, that's the person that you love. And so it's like a confirmation that they really are that good person you want to believe they are. So if your abuse victim is in that phase where they're being courted by the abuser, just forget about getting them out of the relationship at that point. You won't do it. It won't happen. It's not going to happen, because they want to believe that that's the real person. And they'll continue to want to believe that. They'll continue to believe that that's the real person that they love, until they get to that apex of abuse, where for that really tiny moment they can break away for just, it's very, very subtle. Now, if you can be involved in that moment when they can break away, and you can get them far enough away from their abuser, and also get the help that they need to break their own habits around their attitudes about the abuser. Because here's what happens. Even if the abuser is not present, and I know this, oh boy, do I know this. I've done this. Even if he's not there, that romance period happens in the victim's brain, even without them there. They will romanticize the abuser, even if the abuser doesn't come with flowers and, beg forgiveness. They'll do it. A victim will do that in their own mind. It's super sick, but that's what happens. So you got to get them away, and you got to start unbrainwashing them from their Stockholm syndrome. It's like when you're in an abusive relationship, you are being brainwashed, and you have to unbrainwash them. They have to be unbrainwashed. It's not your responsibility to unbrainwash them, but that's what needs to happen for a victim to move on. They have to be unbrainwashed. It's a lot like the work that people do with cult survivors, who have been totally brainwashed to believe that this cult leader is the end all be all. A victim of abuse, somewhere in their mind, believes that that person is their end all be all, just like a cult leader. So just like a victim of a cult, they have to go through a process of cleaning out all that mind control that has been done to them by the abuser. So, in conclusion, if you are wondering why this person is not leaving their abuser because it's obvious to you and everybody else that they are in danger, it's the wrong question to ask. There are more important questions, and those 5 questions are the more important questions. I will post them down below. As I said, please like and share. This could save somebody's life. Thank you.